Alright, ladies and gentlemen, this is just one of those videos where I have to press the record button and then kind of muddle my way through it in the grand scheme of things. So I started dueling people on the PTR server with Paladin. Full disclosure, I've only dueled kitty cat druids so far, and I've dueled at least one really scary rogue. And then, of course, I started dueling a couple mages and absolutely destroying them. And that's when I figured out the whole arcane resist thing. I re-examined the what was it? The Zico versus Firestar duel, that famous Makara duel with the stream sniping paladin that showed up with everything in the world and like all the world buffs basically. To see if arcane resist was performing similarly all the way back then, and the answer is yes. We've known arcane resist is kind of a thing for a while, but it didn't take me and Jakova very long with the whole arcane resist concept to realize that it's not really going to go anywhere, if that makes any sense. Like, okay, we know arcane resist is really good against for us getting us out of sheeps, but how does that help you beat mages in duels and in PvP? The answer is it doesn't, and then we just moved on with our lives. So what's changing things with the arcane resist isn't so much like some kind of rediscovery that it's really powerful, even though it is a rediscovery that it's really powerful. It's the fact that with exorcism and actually range damage spells that can actually, like, you know, punch mages repeatedly for damage, and quite a lot of damage, it's a little bit broken. So yeah, so I got a little distracted with the whole arcane resist thing, but the TLDR on the druid duels and the rogue duels is that a normal person would come away with the conclusion that druids are doing way too much damage and can kite us way too easily, or can kite us way too easily. And rogues are just doing way too much damage right now. That is not the conclusion I came to, and I'm actually really happy to see where druid and rogue PvP is right now. The reason for that is because basically my memory banks kicked on, number one. And I recalled that the reason why rogues in Classic WoW were always at their strongest in a fresh level 60 environment. And that didn't really change for a considerable amount of time. By the time Blackwing Lair comes out, things look a hell of a lot more normal. The reason for this is because rogues in Classic WoW, mechanically, the vast majority of their DPS they get just from going to their skill trainer. That's why videos exist in Classic WoW of rogues using starting zone daggers and being butt naked and beating classes that have Grand Marshal gear, like in an original Classic. And nothing has really changed. Like, literally, their abilities do, like, X amount of damage for Y amount of energy, plus, like, you know, attack power and critical strike. And if you actually look at the difference between, like, a fully Nax geared rogue's damage and, like, a fresh level 60 rogue's damage, it's actually relatively minimal. Whereas the exact same thing cannot be said about a Paladin as a fresh level 60 going from A to B. So we'll talk about that in a second. I'm also thinking that this is kind of a similar situation with druids, because druids, especially kitty cat druids, are very similar mechanically. They both use an energy bar. Their abilities do X amount of damage plus Y. The X is really high. It will be at its highest as a fresh level 60, and the Y will not increase all that much over time. So I think they're pretty much in the same boat. So full TLDR here. I would fight the kitty cat druid, and I tried fighting them as the Holy Shock Paladin build. Shock Eye, and I tried fighting them as my heal Wreck Paladin. In all cases, I could out-heal them for a considerable amount of time, and I could out-damage them, and basically I could drive them back. But once I had driven them back, I have no catch mechanic, I have no finisher mechanic. That's very natural for Paladin versus Druid, especially when we don't have all the items and the toolkit available. The whole time I was fighting, I was thinking to myself, if I had a Mug of Hurt, this would be over. And subsequently, I went and actually tested Mug of Hurt, and I was like, yeah, actually, she still works. Actually, I have that video. I didn't really bother to put it up, so I'll just play it right now of me and my friend out here playtesting Mugahurt.
That's wrong.
Let's see if we get the proc really fast
testing,
here.
Mugahurt.
This is like less than like a minute video. It's already like 1/3 the way through.
Trying. Are we hitting him? What are we doing? Jesus.
Thunk.
Right,
Okay, so there's the proc.
So
watch his travel form, watch him shift, watch him travel form, watch him shift.
After getting absolutely annihilated by
Yeah.
Kitty Cat Druids on the PTR because they would just keep.
Come on,
running
give one
away,
more proc.
And then eventually I would because I could outfight them like 3 or 4 times.
Yeah, so I'm just describing the situation.
This
This is a video I haven't posted.
I
So the whole
like,
time I
Jesus,
was thinking,
Mugahurt.
like, please, for the love of God, I hope Mugahurt still does does its thing properly. And sure enough, it does. So yeah, so that was the tactical situation, is that they would come in, they would beat me up. I'd have to spend like 30% of my mana bar to get them off of me. But then they just reinitiate because I can't kill them, and rinse and repeat till I run out of mana and die. Like rogues like to try to do to you sometimes. But the rogue fighting was a little different. It was a lot closer than you think it would be in either way. But the rogue is pretty much consistently killing me with like 20% life left. There's not a really big takeaway that I can... what I can take away from the PTR server is very limited from a PvP perspective, because everyone's running around with like elixirs of mongoose and Titan's flasks, and they basically just refuse to take them off. Meanwhile, your boy over here is trying to PvP without Divine Steed just to see what life is like. At the same time, I'm not using any flasks. At most, I've got like a flask of chromatic resistance on me. That's not going to do anything versus a cat druid or anything else. So, like, for example, when I was getting beat up by the cat druid, he had like a mongoose elixir. He had a flask of Titans. He had Giant's elixir, so 25 strength. And I was just like, yeah, okay, whatever. I'm not really sure what I can take away from this. However, after thinking about it for a while, let's talk about the difference between Druid scaling as the future goes forward, Rogue scaling as the future goes forward, more importantly, Paladin scaling as the future going forward. So I already talked about how Rogue scaling after being a fresh level 60 is relatively minimal. Druid scaling is likely relatively minimal after being a fresh level 60. But let's talk about Paladins. So the first thing that happens to Paladins is as your gear gets better, you get more and more armor. And that increase in armor over time starts to kind of counteract the increase in DPS of enemy melee classes. Not all enemy melee classes, but definitely noticeably starts countering the DPS increases of rogues specifically. And since cat druids are such a new thing, I really don't know. But increasing armor was definitely beneficial when fighting the druid. Like when I was going Reckoning, I was two-handed, and when I was going Sword and Board, it was much more comfy in Sword and Board. Same thing if you're fighting a rogue, much more comfy in Sword and Board. The other thing to note is that Blizzard has basically given us a two-handed weapon on the PTR that is the equivalent of a limp noodle in our hands, especially for two-handers. They might as well have basically cut one of our balls off and told us to go PvP on the PTR server, like quite literally. And I wanna explain this in no uncertain terms. Okay, so here we have an untalented level 60 Paladin. Okay, no talents whatsoever, no gear whatsoever. And you'll notice that damage says 0, but that's because it doesn't have any weapon. He has enough attack power, butt naked, that he's doing roughly 27 DPS. Paladins, butt naked, and most melee classes do a terrifying amount of DPS butt naked. It's actually about 120 strength, just kind of hidden on your character. It's kind of the same thing with your stamina. You'll see I have 100 stamina, which means I should have 1,000 HP. Standing here butt naked, but instead I have 2,200 HP. Surprise, surprise, it's like I have a hidden 120 health. The exact same thing kind of plays out with mana, but not quite the same. Intellect, yeah. Okay, cool. If I put one of these PTR weapons on this paladin all of a sudden, so that would be like Arcanite Reaper. I just really want to find a... actually, we should go Blood and find a Bloodlight Avenger, because that's basically the same thing. No. Right? Yeah? No, not Bloodlight Avenger. Blood Razor. Blood. Blood Color. Oh, yeah. I'm trying to find a weapon that just does 50 DPS. Reaper? Yeah, so they give us an Arcanite Reaper. It actually does 53.8. Okay, we'll put that. All right, so that's the highest DPS weapon that you can possibly get on the PTR right now. That is the equivalent of a one-handed weapon in, like, Phase 3. This is not a two-hander. They're not giving you a two-hander. They're basically giving you a one-hander. So I slap that weapon on, and the next thing you know, my total DPS shoots up to not even 90. Right? Okay, cool. If I go look at the gear, so this is a geared paladin. This is actually like, Lawbringer geared paladin. And I also put a Reaper on this guy. Okay, cool. So here we can see the difference of what the gear is going to provide you. How much you want to bet it's like 90 DPS? Okay, yeah, so it's 97 DPS. Why is that? Because my attack power went up by a relatively significant amount. Yeah. So we gained a small amount of DPS from our attack power. We gained critical strike, but this damage does not factor in critical strike, I don't believe. Okay, so the difference between me being butt naked with an Arcanite Reaper is 84 versus fully geared. It's like 97 DPS. Pull up that calculator. 97 minus... was it 84? I want to say 84. So it's like plus 13 DPS. Yeah. Maybe 15. We'll be generous and we'll say we're gaining 15 DPS. More than anything, you're gaining melee crit. So we actually gained like damn near 5% melee crit. You'll also notice that butt naked, you've got like 4% melee crit on your character. This is not a two-handed weapon. Okay, this is a one-handed weapon. All right, so let's flash forward into the future, and I will actually put on a Hand of Rag, or a Might of Minithil, which are all proper weapons. So Ashkahndi, Hand of Rag, damn it, what is it? The AQ40 Axe, Dark Edge of Insanity, and Might of Minithil are all kind of in the same boat. Like, some of them have crit, some of them have procs, blah, 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 blah. A lot of them have stats, but they are proper two-handed weapons, and they're all hovering around 80-ish DPS. Even if I type in Grand, and I find, like, a Grand Marshal's Battle Hammer, like 77 DPS and, like, a ton of strength. So even the Grand Marshal's weapons are literally in the same ballpark here, right? Grand Marshal's Claymore, yeah, critical strike, tons of stamina, tons of strength, 77 DPS. Compared it to a Hand of Rag, that's like 80 DPS. These things are comparable, right? You'll notice that our melee damage is now damn near 120. If I swap this out with Might of Minithil, that only also goes up to about 137. All right? Yeah, 95. So we'll go back to Rag here, because that's a little bit more reasonable. Yeah. But what you can see here is that we're literally going from like 84 DPS, which is what you're wielding on a PTR server. You're literally wielding a one-handed weapon. Like, if I click here and I go Manslayer, right? Ancient Hikari Manslayer, she has 50 DPS as a one-handed weapon. And our Arcanite Reaper has 3 DPS as a two-handed weapon. This is not the same world, right? I'm saying that basically you're on the PTR and you're fighting with if you're fighting with a two-handed weapon, basically you're fighting with a one-handed weapon. But I'm going to prove that a little bit more definitively here. All right, so you're doing about 84 DPS ish on the PTR. Compared to if you had a proper two-handed weapon, which would cause you to have 120 DPS. It's even closer to like 121. We'll just do 121 here, and that's ignoring the proc on the weapon and all that stuff. Like, damn, all right. And this is comparable, of course, to like it's basically an AQ 40-ish weapon. But even if I compare it to like an Ashkahndi, I can never spell Ashkahndi. There we go. Yeah, the Great Sword. 81 DPS on the Great Sword. A ton of stamina, a ton of attack power. I bet you if I put this damn thing on, my DPS goes up. Yeah, now I'm at 120 DPS. Blackwing Lair weapon, right? All these weapons are really comparable to each other. What about Untamed Blade? Untamed. Okay, Untamed Blade. Okay, that's a 70 DPS, but a ton of agility and a proc on hit and all that stuff. All right, so we'll just take the middle ground here, and we'll go with Rag. Even though you guys are going to be like, that's an epic weapon. No, actually, she's kind of the equivalent of an Ashkahndi. She's kind of the equivalent of a... She's not epic in the sense that she's, like, outscaling everything in its dog. She's your standard, typical two-handed weapon. What about Blood Drinker? Blood. Good old Blood Drinker. Yeah, 64 DPS, but it's got a proc on hit, strength, and stamina. What about Kalmandor? Kalmandor's Revenge, DPS, is AQ 40 weapon, 81 DPS, proc on hit, strength. Okay, cool. So it's all in the same ballpark. So, again, this is your DPS in the PTR. It's not even that. It's like 80, what was it? 84, right? Yeah, 84. Okay, this is your DPS in the PTR. It's like 84 DPS. Actually, that's not true. Let me switch this out with Arcanite. We'll get the Reaper. Yeah, okay, and that'll tell us definitively. All right, so our damage with an Arcanite Reaper with full Lawbringer set is 98. Okay, that's a better comparison. Let's not be too disingenuous here. Okay, so this is what they have you swinging around with on the PTRs, 98. And if you just had an actual decent two-handed weapon, it would be 121. You'll also notice that I think they upgraded the refined Arcanite Reaper, and the refined Arcanite Reaper goes up to 67 a DPS and like 84 attack power. She's also a 4-second speed weapon. This is actually a proper Molten Core a DPS weapon. I think the best weapon in Molten Core is Bonereaver. Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I'm like, what? The Lava Dredger's not bad either. Bonereaver's Edge. Bonereaver's Edge is like 75.88 DPS. Like, what the balls? Again, so not even the refined Arcanite Reaper really compares. So they have you out here basically swinging the equivalent of a Limp Noodle. The one-handed weapons are not really in the same ballpark. But yeah, so this is what you're doing on the PTR right now compared to closer to what you should have on the PTR. Let's try to... It's literally like what? Like a 24% DPS increase? I think that's literally like a 23% decrease... Yeah, it's literally a 24% DPS increase. So the sheer act of you getting a proper two-headed weapon on your Paladin is going to be a 24% DPS increase to your character. Like, holy balls. On top of that is your HP bar. So your HP bar when you're running around on the PTR right now is somewhere around 4,000. In Lawbringer, she'll start approaching like 5,000, so you're missing like 25% HP. In proper like PvP gear, like AQ 40, Blackwing Lair, where the game really starts hitting its stride, you're going to be closer to like 5,600, 5,800, 6,000 HP, like no problem. So you're missing tons of health. You're missing a fair bit of armor, enough armor to compensate for how much damage the rogues are going to go up. Like their Y damage will increase and be almost canceled out completely by your armor increase and your HP increase. Same story with Druids, and they have you running around swinging a one-handed weapon, pretending it's a two-handed weapon, and I'm not joking. So let's compare it to, yeah, Ebon Hand, I think is, I don't know if that's Black Rock. Yes, this is a perfect example of a one-handed weapon, right? 51 DPS, proc on hit, stamina, fire resist, a really solid weapon. She's probably objectively better than this damn Arcanite Reaper that they have you running around with. But let me try to find a one-handed weapon, a comparison. So, because the story of the two-hander is you're missing 25% DPS. The story with the one-hander on the PTR, however, is not the same thing. So yeah, so if this is the healing weapon. Where's a one-handed DPS weapon? This is a blue. That's a Zul'Gurub weapon that almost does 60 DPS. My bad. I don't want Zul'Gurub. I want Sunken Temple. All right, whatever. I guess we're still scrolling down. Blacksmithing, Stranglethorn Veil, Frostguard, Silithus, Zul'Gurub, Silithus. Come on. Show me Sunken Temple. Dire Maul. All right, we're still scrolling. Jesus, do I got to do zones? Like, what the hell's going on here? Source. Vendors. You know, you're about to piss me off and actually just have me try to remember. Witch Doctor, Sick Mojo, Season of Discovery. Okay, I think this is about it. Damage and healing. Yeah, okay, here we are. We'll just put on an axe, like some random axe. Okay, so here's like a random axe that's like pure DPS. This thing has like, what is that, 40 DPS on it. And I compare it to like a one-handed weapon. If I look at my actual damage, yeah, now we're doing 81 DPS. Where the hell are my calculators? 81. Calculator number 2. All right, cool. And I'll find the Molten Core-ish equivalent. You could literally just do the thing that I just did, which is, I don't want source anymore. Okay, thank you. I want item level. Yep. And we'll scroll down to about the 60s, which is exactly where Molten Core gear is, and try to find a one-hander worth a damn. Yeah, the Imperium Demolisher. Increase attack speed, blah, blah, blah. That's got a serious proc on hit, though. That might not be the best example here, buddy boy. I'm trying to get out of Zul'Gurub. Obsidian Edge Blade. That's a two-handed, right? Yeah. Molten Core. Two-handed mace. Damn you. Yeah, I was going to say the Lava Dredger is pretty good. Look at this thing. She's 2.9 speed, which synergizes very well with your Seal of Martyrdom. She's 67 DPS, which is really good for Phase 1, like endgame Phase 1, Molten Core. 25 stamina, 24 intellect, 15 fire resist, and then mana per 5. It's the fact that she's so fast, and she's actually got good stats on her, and fire resist that makes Lava Driver. She's basically a poor man's Hand of Rag. Brutality Blade. Okay, here we go. Molten Core, Gar. All right, so Brutality Blade. 51 DPS, chance to critically strike, blah, 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 blah. This is a sword, thank God. So we go over here, and our DPS is 92. All right, 92. Okay, so I'm willing to bet you that this is a 12% DPS increase. So we're going to multiply this by 1.12 equals. Yeah. Oh. Okay. 81 times 1.14? Okay, that's closer. Okay. So for the two-handers, the difference between A and B is closer to 25%. And for the one-handers, the difference between A and B is closer to a 14% DPS increase. Even if I compare that to the new stupid like Arcanite Reaper that they're trying to put out, Arcanite Reaper, because this Arcanite Reaper right here is, again, you compare it to like a Lava Dredger, right? 67 DPS is what a two-handed weapon typically has in Molten Core, unless you're specifically getting like a Bonereaver's Edge, which is closer to an endgame weapon, right? But Hand of Rag's also closer to an endgame weapon in there. So we got Refined Arcanite Reaper, really powerful. Her damage is 112. Let's see if that even compares. I remember it was, I want to say it was like 92. Wait a minute. It was literally this, right? Right? Yeah, no. No, it was, I compared it to the base Arcanite Reaper. My bad. What am I doing? Refined Arcanite Champion. Huh. Interesting. I'll have to look into that. 98. Okay, now I remember. 98. Okay, cool. 98 versus, I do believe it's like 112. Yeah. Whoa. That's high enough to be 113, right? Yeah, rounded up that one, round up this one. 1. Okay. Vexations. Come here. Come here. Come here. Clear. 113. Okay, cool. We'll do a 15% DPS increase and see what happens. Okay, not enough. 92. We'll do a 20% DPS increase and see what happens. Getting closer. 92. We'll do a 25% DPS increase and see what happens. Okay, cool. So it's almost the same damn DPS increase in the grand scheme of things. So they literally have you on the PTR basically swinging a one-handed weapon and telling us a two-handed weapon. They're pissing on you and telling you it's raining. So when I'm a Reckoning Paladin, I'm fighting these rogues toe-to-toe, and they beat me because they have Flask of Supreme Titans on, and they have like 30% life left, and I'm painfully aware I'm using a two-handed weapon that's technically a one-handed weapon. The game is balanced. And the exact same thing basically plays out when you're fighting the kitty cat druids, right? You're driving them away. The fight's like really close, but you really wish you had more damage. They're using a Flask of Supreme Titans, and you're wielding the equivalent of a one-handed weapon in Season of Discovery. They're telling you it's a two-handed weapon. They're pissing on you and telling you it's raining. So I am aware that as your gear gets better, rag. Really? Scroll up. I'm aware that as your gear gets better and better and better and better, these numbers are going to get better and better and better, like in your favor, as a paladin. So I wish they'd given us a decent two-handed weapon to work with, a Molten Core level two-handed weapon to go with our Molten Core-ish two-handed gear. But instead, they're like, no, you're going to be running around with like 25% less damage than you should have. And my brain's just like, what the balls? So if I recall correctly, it was like 92, and this is like 121. And if I multiply this by like 30% DPS increase, we're not even there yet. And if I multiply this by 32%, I do believe it's closer to 33% is what math was telling me. 1.133. Yeah. So we compared it to a Molten Core level weapon. So compared to a Molten Core level weapon, you're missing damn near 24% a damage, if not 25, right? Big deal. And between a decent endgame weapon, which are available in Molten Core, right? Bonereaver's Edge, Hand of Rag, Ashkahndi, Untamed Blade. These weapons are all Grand Marshal's weaponry. All these weapons are in the same ballpark with each other as far as power level is concerned. You're missing damn near 33% a DPS increase. So, if you find yourself in melee and you're losing, but the fights are somewhat close, and you find yourself feeling that if you had a 20% DPS increase, the fights would look a hell of a lot closer, just know you're going to get that by the sheer act of like stepping into Molten Core. And your enemies are not going to scale anywhere near as hard. So this is why I am super happy with the way the duels are going. I'm literally losing and getting my butt kicked, and then thinking about it logically and going, how much DPS are we missing? How much are we going to scale up? How much are they going to... Okay, they're dead in the future. All right, whatever. This is perfectly fine. Everything is fine. There's a similar thing that plays out with spellcasters, like if you're getting your butt kicked with spellcasters. So, again, the sheer act of us upgrading our weapon as we go forward is going to increase our DPS by, our PvP DPS by like 33%, which is terrifying, right? Our HP bar is going to increase by 50%, which is also terrifying. If you don't know, there's like 2 different Paladin builds, like when you're in final form. So when you're a final form Paladin will have like 6,000 hit points, and they'll have like 20% melee crit, and they will have damn near like 130, 140, but it's closer to 140 white DPS on their weapon, in conjunction with like 200 spell power and so forth and so on. That's like a final form PvP geared Paladin, using a mix of like Crusader gear and Avenger gear. You have like 3 or 4 pieces of Avenger gear on you. It's really interesting. Or you can go the fire resist build that I keep pushing, which has about 130-ish white DPS on her. What the hell was I trying to say here? I'm trying to express that your HP bar is going to scale drastically, and your DPS is going to scale drastically, just as your weapon damage upgrades scale drastically. We're talking like damn near 40% weapon damage upgrade, or DPS upgrade, from what you're seeing on the PTR, if not closer to like 45%. Insane amounts of DPS upgrade as you get a proper two-handed weapon. Your health damn near increases by 50% as you start gearing more and more properly as the future goes forward. What do spellcasters get? Right? What do they get? Like, what do they have right now? Well, they have like a fair bit of critical strike. Like, they'll definitely get more critical strike. Their spell power is not going to go up all that much, especially in PvP. I think that right now they're running around with like 400-ish spell power. I don't really know. For PvP purposes, they cap out at like 500-ish spell power. Are they going to double in are they going to get a 50% HP buff? Hell no, they're not. They top out at about 4,000, 5,000-ish HP, depending on the class. Are they going to get like a 50% DPS increase from here on out? No, they are not. So if you look at like the power level increase curves of DPS classes, they're going to start stagnating in the grand scheme of things. And if you look at us Paladins right now, because they're basically giving us, they're literally pissing on us and telling us it's raining with the 200 weapon options. Our DPS is going to spike impressively. Our HP bar is going to go up impressively. Our resistances are going to start coming online. Everything is fine. So what this means is, on the PTR, is that if you are losing right now and the fights are somewhat close, just know that the game is well balanced. Anything you are beating on the PTR right now, just know that that's not going to change. You're going to continue to put them in the dirt, and it may or may not be balanced. So it is what it is. But I could make dueling videos on the PTR and show you guys me losing to all these classes if you really want to. I'm beating up mages, but that's because of the arcane resist. I could show you me losing to the classes that are using, Flask of Titans and all that stuff if you want. But even with all of that, they're kind of sort of barely winning, and I'm painfully aware of how much I'm missing on my Paladin, and I'm just standing there. It's like lose duel, get butt kicked, and I'm like, this is actually balanced. Unironically right now, this is balanced because I know very, very soon in the future, this rogue is going to just die horribly. This druid is just going to die horribly because of how much DPS and HP we're missing, and armor we're missing on our Paladins. Like, what the hell? Like, if I scroll over armor here, it gets weirder. There's no talent points in this armor. You have like 56% armor on this Paladin. There's not a single lick of a talent point here in tier 1. In proper, as you gear more and more, this will get closer to a 50% armor damage reduction. If that doesn't sound like a massive increase, that's like a 33% increase in your effective HP. I'm pretty sure a 46% damage reduction is close to a 180%. We'll say we'll do 170. 170. I forget how to do this. Point. Times it by point. Okay, 7. Yep. No. 0.6. Well, the 6 plus the 40, no, it's going to be 50, you dumb. 0.54. All right, cool. So 170 times 0.54, and we're not even there yet. So 180, yeah. Give me a sec. 180 times 0.56. This is with the armor damage reduction, right? The armor damage reduction is 46%, which means that you have 56% effective remaining. And then I do that, boom. Okay, cool. So what this 40%, 46% armor is doing is it's increasing your effective physical damage, health, and healing effects by 80%. That's what that's telling you. So when that jumps up from 46% armor to 50% armor, as your gear gets better, you're going to magically gain 20% more effective healing and 20% increased effective HP just from the gearing in your armor. And like I said, that matches almost perfectly with the amount of DPS that the rogues and the druids and the other classes gain as they go up in their DPS. The two all basically cancel each other out. And then you're just going to have like 50% more HP on your Paladin going forwards. And so it stops being anywhere near a fair fight. And then you're already missing like 40% damage on your two-handed weapon. It's not going to be fair in the future. It's not going to be fair in the future. So yeah, things are balanced. If you are not losing to rogues right now on the PTR, I would be making a completely different video right now. If we were beating druids and beating rogues on the PTR right now, I'd be making a video trying to tell Blizzard that paladins are OP and they need to be nerfed. Because in the future, it's only going to get worse. All right, cool. So on the video here, and Day Assault, boys.